On today's solo episode, I talk about positivity versus negativity and how you can cultivate positivity by practicing 10 forms of positive emotions. This is Rooted with Robert, reminding you to breathe that beautiful air out there and embrace each moment you find yourself in. Welcome back to episode 5 of Rooted with Robert. Today we're going to talk about positivity versus negativity. This topic has kind of been fresh on my mind. I just finished reading a book on positivity for one of my classes, and I really enjoyed it. I actually got a lot out of it. So I thought, hey, why not talk about it on the podcast, right? So positivity, I'm sure a lot of people, are familiar with it, and I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it in the wrong ways, with some misunderstandings about it and how to go about it. So I kind of just want to talk about it in some ways that maybe can be applicable to you. So the biggest thing about positivity and negativity, I think, comes with the power of choice, because we all have the choice to make. We can choose whether to be positive or we can choose whether to be negative. Whether we necessarily know it or not in the moment, that's your own doing. You have, you need to be self-aware of your actions. If you're not, then, you might be going down a rabbit hole that you might not necessarily want to be going down, but you don't know. So it's always good to be self-aware, as has been a theme in many of these podcasts. But choice is the biggest thing when it comes to this topic, in my opinion, because you have to make that intentional choice. So I'm going to give you a quote to start this off from William James. He was a philosopher, psychologist at Harvard, born in the 19th century, died in the 20th century. He was actually, I believe, the first person who offered a psychology course. I believe that's true. You can fact check me on that. But here's the quote. "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another." So I kind of chose this quote. I actually have this quote on my wall in my room to kind of remind me that, when I'm stressed out, I can choose to not be stressed by the way I look at the situation, which is where the whole choice thing comes in, because you can choose to look at it one way or you can choose to look at it another way. Each way is going to have its consequences. So obviously you want to choose the way that is going to best suit you, and don't choose the wrong way and then complain about it if you're aware of the whole choice process. If you're not, well, that's why I'm here. Another quote that I was first introduced to by this book that I just finished, called Positivity, by Barbara Fredrickson. She's a psychologist who studies in positive psychology. And the reason why I mentioned the book is because I'm also going to bring out some information from it, so I might as well cite it now so I don't have to worry about citing it later. I'll just reference it as as the book itself. So here's the quote. I really, really like this quote. I think it's just an old Native American legend or something along those lines. There's not necessarily a citation for this. Here's how it goes. "One evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside of people. He said, 'My son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith.' The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, 'Which wolf wins?' The old Cherokee simply replied, 'The one you feed.'" Boom, people. I love that so much, because not only does it show the art of choice, the one you feed, the one that you choose to feed, but it also shows that both negativity and positivity in forms of good and evil, respectively to the quote, are always present. They're both present, and they both fight each other within each of us. So this kind of brings me into the next topic, which is or the next point I want to make, where positivity is not absence of negativity, because all of those feelings, good and bad, are always going to be present in our world. They're always going to be present within us, within the universe. That's just how it is. So that's why I like that quote, because it demonstrates the choice, but it also demonstrates that both of those things are within us, and it comes down to the choice to choose which pathway we want to go down, which wolf we want to feed. So going off that, negativity is not something to be ignored, but it needs to be accepted and let go, because it is inevitable. One thing that comes to my mind is hurt, pain, sorrow, all these things that we can see as negative emotions. I mean, they have a purpose. They have a really big purpose, and if you actually look at these emotions with positivity, that means that you look at them for the bright side, quote unquote. What can you get out of this? I recently, have gone through some hurtful feelings and stuff like that, but I didn't look at it in a negative way to come out with self-pity or resentment. I went in it because I knew that it would teach me something. It was a challenge, because negativity or negative emotions, they're not jolly good. They don't make you feel good. They actually make you feel uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is a challenge for me personally. I'm sure a lot of you can relate, but it's a challenge to feel uncomfortable. And I took that hurt and pain and whatever it was in that moment as a challenge to grow from it. Not something to put me down, but something where I can fully accept and embrace, take what I needed from it, and then let it go. And I think that's very crucial to just overall mental health and emotional health, as those are correlated with our whole health in general. So very, very crucial. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the whole idea of, positivity. It's of, you hear the be positive, or, I'm just going to be positive today, or just be, it's kind of like I know the book references to this. It's like the smiley face. You just throw on the big yellow smiley face. And what this means is that positivity needs to be genuine. As Fredrickson from the book mentions, it needs to be heartfelt. It can't just be a slapped-on label. And she actually mentions that when you do that, it actually causes more harm than good. And so what I mean by that is, excuse me, if something bad happens in your life, you just if something bad happens in your life and you just tell yourself, or something bad happens to someone else, you just tell them, be positive, or just be positive. That's not doing anyone any good, and it's probably doing them more harm, because they're trying to trick their mind to thinking to be more positive when their feelings are actually not in the positive realm. Which is not a bad thing. It just means that you have to deal with and embrace the emotions that you're feeling at that time before you can cultivate the positive emotions. And from the book, as I mentioned, Fredrickson kind of lays out 10 positive emotions. And these are joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, and love. And love actually encompasses all of the previous emotions. But basically, like I was saying, it's not about being positive. It's living through the positive life habits, or these virtues of joy, gratitude, etc., etc. When you live through those, when you practice those, when you embrace those, positivity emerges from that. So it really does just relate to this whole concept of being rooted, because you want to root yourself in these positive emotions. You want to root yourself in gratitude, in pride, not arrogance, but pride and joy, serenity, inspiration, awe, etc. You don't want to go from the top down, as I mentioned in the first podcast with the leaf, the tree doesn't grow from the leaves to the roots. It wouldn't be stable in any type of storm or anything. So because of that, you need to grow. You can't slap on the positivity. You need to go from the bottom up, from the roots to the leaves. And another thing about these things is when you kind of go through these genuine forms of positivity, these emotions, it creates a different dialogue in our heads. I'm sure many of you have heard of inner talk or self-talk, or inner thoughts, whatever you might want to call it. But a lot of us really don't understand the significance that plays in our lives, because it can happen so fast that you don't even realize the thought or reaction that has occurred in your head because of a situation. So this is how I kind of lay it out. Positive self-talk is not just your inner thoughts. It kind of goes like this. You respond to the environment, which leads to an interpretation, which leads to a dynamic or variance of the meaning. So for example, let's just say you are sitting in class and the teacher asks a question of you, and you might not know the answer, or you give an answer that's not necessarily what she's looking for. It might be very easy for you to automatically, but not consciously be aware of, tell yourself, oh man, I'm dumb, or I should have gotten that right, like what's wrong with me? That happens to a lot of us, believe it or not. It's happened to me until I started to actually practice a lot of these emotions, these positive emotions and states of being. And practicing those things actually generated a broader positive self-talk just throughout my whole day. And that's when I realized what it was like before I even had that positive self-talk. Because I'm like, oh wow, if this is how I'm talking to myself now and I feel good about it, man, what was I talking about before? Because if you're talking to yourself, if you're talking badly to yourself, no wonder your mood's gonna dip, or it's not, you're not gonna feel good about yourself. And what I found, at least relating to these 10 forms I talked about, pride is a great way. It's a great thing to practice to build this consistency in your positive self-talk. So how do we practice pride? Well, a simple achievement, whether it be assignment, whether it be making a good decision. Your friends want to go out to drink, but you have other obligations, important obligations to do, so you say no. Just staying on task with what you had planned for the day, kind of related. After you do those types of things, you tell yourself, give yourself a good job. Like, yeah, that was a good decision I made. Or tell yourself, good job with doing that homework. You did it on time. Stuff like that. It doesn't have to be so corny, but you really do want to be your best friend in that sense. I mean, if one of your best friends did something like that, you would most likely tell them, hey, oh, nice job, man. Like, you did good on that, unless you're a shitty friend, but you would tell them something like that, something encouraging. So why not give yourself the same encouragement that you would give your best friend? Because as I mentioned before, we kind of are all that we have. When we wake up to when we go to sleep, what's in our heads is what we have. So we might as well try to cultivate a positive way of our thoughts to be run and our thoughts to encourage us and affirm our behaviors instead of make us feel worse about what we're doing. So out of those, pride is something that I personally have practiced, so I had that experience. And when I practiced it, I realized that, like, wow, like just by giving myself those little pep talks, you can call them, even though they weren't even pep talks, they were just seriously like sentences after I did something. Like after I do this podcast, I'm probably going to be like, nice job, man. Like you got yourself in the position, you got the equipment, you recorded, you did it. Like that's good, because like think about it, like all you're doing is reinforcing yourself to continue success. You know, I'm not going to just play this off like, oh yeah, it's nothing, because it is something, because I could have been doing nothing. I could have been eating a bag of potato chips on my couch, stoned, watching Planet of the Apes, wondering where my life is going to go tomorrow because the world is so unpredictable. I mean, come on now. This is a very realistic thing and a very practical thing that we can all do. And I'm telling you guys, not just because the book provided the science, but because I've experienced it myself, it really does work, honestly. So this whole patience and positivity go hand in hand. I've been a big believer in patience as of recently, because after kind of reverse engineering, as Gary Vaynerchuk would say, my past, my childhood, I realized I wasn't necessarily the most patient kid. So here I am older now. You have to inventory yourself, you have to audit yourself and kind of see where you're at on the spectrum. And I learned, I'm not as patient as I would like to be. So patience has been something that's been always on my mind every day, trying to practice it. But patience heavily relates to positivity, because you have to allow yourself to take the time to change these habitual mental, I guess I like to call them the mental lens that you see, you see the world in. It takes time. You have to be patient through that period, because it's not just going to happen overnight. It does take time. And honestly, if you do consistently for a week, you'll probably feel better, but you also have to keep doing it after that week, and the week after that, and the week after that, until you finally run through this full cycle where you no longer are being interrupted by your old way of thinking, your old mental lens, the way you see the world, the way you see yourself, that all you know is that new positive mindset that you've cultivated over those past weeks and months. And also, patience is important because you have to be resistant of those impulsive or that reactive thinking. Like I just mentioned, like that the habitual pattern of thinking that you already had is you're more naturally inclined to fall back to that, because that's what you've known. So when you make a change, you're gonna face a lot of that resistance, because it's gonna keep pulling you back. And it takes patience. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it. And negativity it kind of weighs more, quote unquote. Like it's very intense. Negativity is much more intense, and that's why depression is so heavy. Depression can make you not even want to get out of bed. But that's lots of negativity. That's negativity that's been prolonged and that has intensified so much that it's gotten to that point. I'm just talking about negativity in general. It weighs more, so you got to be strong through the process to really have a good force in pushing that resistance back. So kind of like I said, this is an everyday practice. The goal here is for lifetime personal development. That's how this should be seen. You don't want to just tell yourself, I got to be more positive. I'm going to do this because if I put in this variable, if I put in X, I get Y out, and Y is going to be me being more positive. It's like, well, if you go in with that mindset, you're probably not going to succeed as well. But if you go in knowing this is a lifetime change, that in 10 years, your life is going to be totally different because of these changes that you've implemented. And I mean different in a good way, because all these things have kind of networked its way into your other dimensions of life in only positive ways. Because when you breed positivity, it brings back so much more than what you've originally have put in. And it kind of, that's like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like these positive changes will make us better. They will make us a better human than we were yesterday, or last month, or last year, or 5 years, whatever it is. But when you look back, it's all, the way I see life is, as humans, not, I believe in optimization, living our optimal lives. I think that's great, but why don't we just settle for being better than we were, previously? That's much more practical than trying to be optimal. Obviously, you do this to work up to an optimal state of being, but if your goal is not necessarily to be optimal functioning, your goal should still be personal development. Why would you want to stagnate across your whole lifetime? Because you're just going to miss out. You're really going to miss out. You're going to be stuck in old ways, and not all of those old ways are going to work. And this is kind of where you have to check in with yourself. You have to audit yourself and see which of those things are kind of maladaptive and aren't working for you anymore. And then you kind of implement this stuff. But in general, with this whole positivity thing, this is more like an underlining basis. It just underlines your life. If you had the same life, if you had you have your life right now, you split it into two sections. They're both identical, and you have one that's underlined by positivity and one that's just the same. The positive life is gonna end up making that life that you have just expand and broaden and create so much more wealth for you. Not just money. I'm talking about emotional wealth, mental wealth, relational wealth. It's gonna create so much more. And that's why I think it's so important to start practicing these things, to make it practical in your daily life, because it's not just some kooky positive psychologist who's like, oh yeah, positivity, and there's some people out there that are so, it's so weird how some people are so like against emotions, especially men. Like, oh, positivity, it's so corny, like I'm manly. It's like, what are you talking about, man? Like, positivity is just a way of looking at the world, and why would you not want to look at it with awe, with love, with gratitude? Like, you want to look at it with self-pity, resentment, and all those evils. Like, to me, that's not a life worth living. Because I do believe that we can keep developing, even if you're 40, even if you're 50. You keep developing. You keep maturing. You probably are even more in your prime when you're 40 if you keep up with it, if you don't burn out, because you have so much under your belt by that time. It's amazing. So, and like, on that note, if you start now, like right now I'm getting close to 22. If I start now by cultivating all these things, I can't even imagine where I'm going to be in 10 years. And it's just going to be incredible. So all I have to do though is just be patient, be grateful, practice all these things, practice more of the ones that I have trouble with, and not necessarily less, but you don't have to concern yourself as much with the ones that you're naturally inclined to do. For example, if you naturally pride yourself, not arrogance, but pride yourself in what you do, then that's good. Like, that's a strength. You should be proud of that. But if you feel that you don't get inspired as much, or you don't find interest in things, then maybe work on those things a little bit more. Put some more time into that. And honestly, awe and serenity, I think everyone should just experience. Those are just great things. I find a lot of awe just in nature itself. And nature just has so many good benefits to us. Just calms you down, just really brings you back. So yeah, those are some things to keep in mind. So I'm doing good on time here. I'm kind of getting near the end here, but one point that I really want to make is you really want to relish and savor the goodness. Savor the goodness. Every moment is new. you don't want to expect that good is always going to be there, because it won't. Life is about the highs, the lows, and the in-between. And when something good is at your feet, you need to savor it. You need to embrace it. You need to be grateful that it is there, because it won't always be there. And if you get the doorbell ring one day and it's a UPS guy and it's a package that you've been waiting for, you get that package. If you leave it there for a week, it might not be there when you go to check on it again. And I don't know how good of an analogy that was, but basically, when something good is at your feet, not literally, figuratively, embrace it, because it's not always going to be there, and you want to enjoy the goodness when it's there, and it's only going to benefit you in the long run. So, related to this, and kind of related to the whole, the negative impulses and stuff, I kind of want to explain, like, when the cravings, the urges, and these negative influences come up, and they end up consuming your attention, your time, and your progress, then honestly, just slow your tide. And what I mean by that is just slow down. Don't let yourself get caught up in those currents, because honestly, and it might not be obvious, but they are your currents. Those cravings, those urges, those negative influences are your currents. So pace them as you need them. Make the choice about what you're going to do about them. Are you going to just let them consume you, or are you going to consciously make a choice to accept that they have come there, but then let them go because you know that they no longer serve you? And kind of on the whole savoring the goodness part, I have a quote that I wrote myself, and I think it's so applicable. I just couldn't miss a chance to read it. And it goes like this: one step at a time, one moment anew. It is the intention to devote one's experience so far into the present that one may live a life full of harvest and love. And I truly stand behind that, because positivity has a lot of connections with mindfulness, I believe, because the more mindful you are, the more you see, the more good, the more you can savor in the world. And every moment is anew. It really is. Everything is constantly changing, even on minute levels. So when you put yourself so far into the present, you are only setting yourself up for growth. And that's kind of where that quote was intending to go. So I hope you guys got something out of this. I strongly stand behind positivity and these 10 emotions. I'll read them one more time for you guys. They're joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, and love. See which ones you're good at. See which ones you're not. Practice the ones that you're not good at. And just see where they take you. I'm telling you, they definitely make a difference. They make a huge difference, and you'll just feel better about yourself, about those around you, about your circumstances. It's easier to look on the bright side of a challenge that comes your way, because you end up seeing the challenge as another step to growth, as another piece of information that you can input into your mind to only make your next choice more on point, more directed towards the goal that you're actually trying to accomplish. So on that note, I'm going to end with another quote by William James, and that is, "Believe that life is worth living, and your belief will help create the fact." Thank you guys for tuning in on this Rooted with Robert episode. I'm so glad you guys are coming in and kind of just, taking your time to listen. I really do appreciate you guys. So until next time, Enjoy your day, be more present, and cultivate that positivity. Peace.